and welcome to this Bird with a Feather session on UVM. My name is Mark Strickland. I work at Marvell Semiconductor, and I'm also the chair of the Accellera UVM Working Group. We are the group that focuses on creating a library that gets distributed for UVM. So why are we here? UVM really could use your help. It's not as dire as it looks in the picture. UVM is not falling apart or imminent doom. But we do need help from the user community to understand what is the best way forward. So the UVM committee decided that DVCon would be a great opportunity to hear from the users, and we're looking forward to getting some feedback from you. So what is the problem? So we have recently released the UVM 2020 1.0 library that's based on the IEEE standard 1800.2/2020. We got a lot of bug fixes in there from bugs that were in place from UVM 1.1 even, 1.2, and also in the UVM 2017 release. And that seems really good and should help a lot of people. But we also see that many users are still using 1.1D or 1.2, which means that they can't take advantage of any of the work that we've done. So as we think about how to move forward, it doesn't seem to make sense to keep piling on bug fixes if people aren't able to use them. And when I say there have been a lot of bug fixes, it's good to back that up. So we've made a little chart here of the bugs that we've fixed between versions. And as you see, going from 1.1D to 1.2, there was 60-ish. Then we fixed a whole lot more going to IEEE. And in the latest IEEE version, we've again fixed about 40. And in total, since 1.1D, this amounts to about 240 errata that we've resolved, about 50 of which we would classify as major. So there are a lot of things that will help people not waste time using the UVM library. And we really would like to get those into the hands of users who no longer are stuck on running the old version. So as I mentioned, what we really need here is your help, and that help comes in the form of input. We need to know what you think is the best way to bridge this.
Having just released the 2020 version, we are now looking at what kind of work should we do for 2021. So normally what we would do is look at the LRM and see how it had advanced and what kind of things do we need to add or fix up in the library to make it match the LRM. And we would look at errata and see which of those we could fix up in this release. And finally, we'd look at the enhancement list and see if we could put in any enhancements that people have been asking for. But this time we have a further consideration, which is how do we resolve this widening gap that is between what we are working on and what the users are working on.
So what we're seeing here is this wider gap between the library and what the users are using. And that really is a problem for many reasons. One is that as the committee, we really want to be helpful to the users, and we're not very helpful if we're making something that we don't use. It's also a problem if we are putting new things in the library and people don't test them for many years because the bad code stays in there and gets stale, and we don't even remember maybe why we put it in there, right? So it's a whole lot better to have a tighter loop between when you develop something and when people actually use it. So what we really want to focus on in 2021 is reducing this gap. All right, so here's what the committee thinks is the cost-benefit analysis that goes on with users when they're weighing migrating to the latest UVM. You guys can give us feedback on whether we're right here, but I'll just throw this out. So we think that the benefits of migrating to the latest UVM include that you get the latest fixes, so there's less bugs that could potentially be causing you problems as you go through your own verification. And you'll also be getting enhancements and performance improvements, so everything runs a bit better and smoother. And finally, if everyone was on the latest UVM, then everyone in the industry would be using the same code base, not different versions of UVM, which gives advantages when you are picking up code from somebody else, when you are getting employees who've been used to something else, and also, again, everybody is looking at your version and maybe finding bugs that you don't have to find. So that all sounds great, but of course there are costs. And the big cost that we can see is that there's a cost in porting any of your code when there's incompatible API. And there's also the possibility that changes in behavior may surface, because if we've changed anything in UVM, there's some behavior that's changed. Even if it was errata, maybe you were counting on that errata. So your end user code has changed its behavior. All right, so the big problem here is backward incompatibility. And you may ask, why did the UVM committee ever make something incompatible with what was there before? Because it's really led to a lot of these problems. So we just want to say why we've gotten to this point a little bit. Maybe our choices weren't necessarily all the best, but as we're developing, we have to look at what API was already there, and when it was redundant or inconsistent, it just didn't seem right to standardize. You really don't want a standard with multiple ways to do something or things that don't work well together. Anybody new picking up the library is going to have problems with that. Another consideration is that sometimes we had to change an API decision that was made a long time ago because it just wasn't optimal for allowing functionality that we now want to get in. So there might be some new functionality, or there might have been API that allowed some dangerous behavior that really was going to lead to bugs, and there was no way to really fix the bugs without fixing this API and closing the hole that was there. And also keep in mind that the working group is a volunteer group of people from industry. We don't really have the time to support variations in the library. So if we had a lot of variations of here's the old API and the new API, and we had to maintain both of those, we just don't have the time to do that. So we really had to make the difficult decision sometimes to deprecate certain code, which does cause this backward incompatibility. So just as a bit of a justification, we'll give you a quick UVM history lesson here. Like UVM has had many parents. It started with languages including E, System C, System Verilog. They had various methodologies that they started with, ERM, ADM, DMM, and the industry at the time, it's early 2000s here, said, we really need to bring all this together. So we gradually merged these methodologies into UVM, and that was originally released in 2011. But at that point, a lot of the work to make it a coherent methodology wasn't done. We really just tried to pull in the methodology ideas that we currently had. And that's what left us with a lot of these APIs that were inconsistent or had some holes in it. Okay, so what are our ideas on how we can help users migrate? And again, these are just ideas. We're not saying that we're doing these. We're throwing it out there as seed ideas. One is that we could create migration guides. So maybe it would help people to migrate. It would lower that cost that we saw if we could produce some guides that said, when you see this particular construct, here's what you replace it with. Taking that even further, maybe we could create some scripts to help users migrate their code, so that you could run the script on the code, it would update the code in place, and now be compatible with a later version. All right, so that was all dealing with the cost of migration. The other side of the coin is the benefits of moving to it. And something that we have considered in the working group is whether we have given enough benefit to people migrating to the UVM 1800.2 version. So recently we have been much more focused on cleaning up the API and making things standardized, and less time on putting in major new functionality. So really the functionality that you see in 1800.2 2020 and 1.2 are the same. At the level of, what can I do with it? They're really the same. With bug fixes, sure, but there's not really anything huge and new to say, here's an advantage to moving. Here's something you could do now that you couldn't do before. So we have thought of various new big enhancements we could do. We could do a overhaul of the register package, which is probably the area where we have seen the most bugs filed, and probably could just use a re-architecting to really clear out all those bugs. Another one is the sequencer driver interface, making it more PLM-like instead of the sort of specialized interface that the sequencer driver currently has. And maybe there's something else. Like again, here we'd like to get some feedback from the users. Is there something big that you'd like to see? And if that big thing was in there, it'd really be worth your while to go through the effort to do that. Okay, so we're back to UVM needs your input. How are we going to get that? So there's a few things we want to do. One is we will get some feedback in this session here, and that's great because we can get some the verification professionals who have come to the conference, but we know there's some people who weren't able to come here. So we'll also have a poll running outside of this for a few weeks so that we can pick up that input as well. All right, so for the people that are here, one of the ways we're going to get this input is by doing some Zoom polls. This is nice because it allows us to really structure the questions and get a feeling of how we are how we're set up in the whole room as far as the feedback people have, and can get a real good overview of that. And once we are done with the Zoom polls, we will open it up to a live Q&A, so people can verbally say the kind of things that they didn't feel were covered in the Zoom poll, or other ideas that they have as to where they would like to see the working group go. So we will start the Zoom polls now. Thank you very much for attending, and thank you very much for giving us this feedback. We really will take it very highly and make sure that we are acting on the things that our users really care about to try and make sure that everyone finds it worthwhile to move to our next version of UVM. And thank you very much. Bye.